Hey, morning and good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Steva, MUDEC, spring of 1988, and Miami class of 1989. I currently serve as the chair of the MUDEC Alumni Advisory Board, and I'll be your host this evening for the first virtual Bofferding beer tasting. So I want to welcome everyone. Just a little background here. At the 50th anniversary 2 years ago, we saw such a great outpouring of support and excitement and wanted to start bringing more programs like this to all our MUDEC alumni that are around the U.S. and really around the world. You can find us pretty much in every corner of the world. Um, I wanted to take a moment to let you know that we have also recently started to offer a new clothing line through the Miami Alumni office. So check their website out. We are just beginning with that. We're going to be expanding the material or the offerings here shortly. I know there's a new graphic that's coming out shortly, so hopefully in the near future you can order that. So please check it out. They're going to make great gifts for your favorite MUDEC alumni for Christmas. So again, the more support, the more stuff we can start offering on that. I also want to thank a couple people. First of all, is our fellow board member Beth Pohl, who helped bring this together. Everyone at the Miami Alumni office in Oxford, the folks at Ansay International, who are the importers of Bofferding beer, and of course, everyone at Bofferding beer. Without their help tonight, we wouldn't be here. So again, thank you, everyone. So tonight, we are proud and excited to feature a virtual beer tasting, which is kind of the unofficial beer of MUDEC. Leading us through tonight is Bofferding's own Mathias Lentz. A little bit of background on Mathias. He is the 10th generation to work for the family beer brewing with his sister Isabel. He's been working in the brewery for the last 8 years after spending the previous 15 years abroad, and is now responsible for the global export of Bofferding beer, excluding the areas of Luxembourg and Belgium. And so we are thankful for Mathias for taking time to join us tonight, especially since they are 6 hours ahead of us tonight. So it's 11 o'clock their time. So with that, there will be questions at the end of the will be collected during the registration and also at the end. I'll read those out with that. And let's see if there's anything else. So again, just if you have questions, hit the ask a question button and we'll ask Mathias these questions later on. So tonight, and enjoy everything. I hope everyone's got their Bofferding beer ready and their glasses. And so tonight, the webinar will last about an hour. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mathias. So again, thank you, Mathias.
Eric, thank you very much. Greetings, everyone from Luxembourg. For all the people that have these good old memories from Luxembourg that have been here on the Miami campus, I hope this will bring back some memories. Just to give you an idea, we're going to start with a little presentation about the brewery, so you know who we are. And after that, we're going to go through the tasting. So when we start with the brewery, we can go to the next slide. Just to give you an idea, we're a family business for over 255 years. That means there were different breweries. The first one was in 1764. That was in the Grund, which is in the city center of Luxembourg. This is the Funkbrischer brewery, which is our family, which is part of our heritage. Then at the same time, 100 years later, 1842, there was a second brewery that was founded in Brasserie, which is in the south of Luxembourg, called Bofferding. In 1975 is when those two breweries merged together. They were both family businesses. They merged together and they kept the name Bofferding for the simple reason Bofferding at the time was a bigger beer, a bigger brand, and they decided to keep the beer. But management changed over time, and the management family, the Funkbrischer family, which is now Lentz, took over the management. In 2000, we started going into logistics because we believe that logistics is an important part of it, because it's one thing to brew a beer, but the other thing is to get beers to people and so they can actually consume it. So in 2000, we bought a company called Newman, which is still part of the group, and which we still deliver over 3,400 different products. We are talking water, coffee, sugar, anything that you need in a bar. Then in 2004, we acquired a different company, which is called Batin, It was a small family business in the south of Luxembourg, where the children didn't want to join the company, so we bought it up and we kept the brand Batin alive today. When we move to the next slide, so this is the family business, so it's still independent. We are still 100% a family business, the 9th and the 10th generation. So my father, who's also part of the tasting today, so if you have any questions, please ask him directly the questions. And my sister, we both work in the brewery today. So my sister does all the sales in Luxembourg, and I do especially France, which is an upcoming market, and global export. Global export, just so you know, it's a very small part of our business. With this, we have an external CEO for the simple reason that it's always easier to obey an external CEO than your father when he keeps asking you questions and you tell him, please don't interrupt. When we move on to the next slide, we will see what our brasserie actually does. So we have 4 different brands. We have 3 beer brands and 1 water brand. So when we move on to the next slide, we have the Bofferding. So this is the original brand that we've had for 255 plus years. We have the classic Bofferding Pils, which we're going to taste later on. We have a Bofferding hop, which is a citra beer. It's a dry top lager, so it has that feeling of an IPA, but it's much lighter in alcohol and it's much fruitier, kind of a summer beer. And then we have a Bofferding Bio, Bio meaning organic, with organic raw materials, which we launched in 2020. Great year to launch. Then we go to the next slide. This is our Batin. So this is a small brewery from the south of Luxembourg that we bought up. We kept the brand because we believed that we didn't want to mix up the Bofferding and the Batin's brands, because one of them is more craft while the other one is a typical lager. We have a lot of different brands on it. Some of them we're going to taste today. Just so you know, today everything that goes into the US or global export, as we say, which means everything excluding France, Luxembourg, and Belgium, goes under the name of Batin. Everything else goes under the name of Bofferding. So today you'll have the Bofferding Triple, which is in Luxembourg will be a Batin Triple, same as the Brune, which will be a Bofferding Brune. The simple reason why we did that is because we didn't want to launch 2 different brands in a market that we didn't know. It would just be too complicated. It's complicated enough with 1, so we didn't want to go into 2. Go to the next slide, please. So the next one is a Funkbrischer. So if you were listening, it was the original brewery from our family. We wanted to resurrect this brand for the simple reason because it's vegan and organic. We wanted to go a different way. We didn't want to put it under the Bofferding or the Batin name because we believe that people are going to start asking questions. Well, why is Bofferding not organic, or why is your Batin not organic, and what's going on with these beers? So we wanted to make something very different, and this is where we came up with the Funkbrischer, which is a organic and vegan beer. We wanted to start this off in only bottles. It became very successful that now we're doing kegs, and we have a lot of increase in sales every year. So it's a very successful product that was supposed to be just a little gimmick, if you can say that. Go to the next slide. So just so you know about all our beers, they're 100% natural products. There's no additives, no preservatives. We have 4 ingredients and that's it. The water that we get is 317 meters below the brewery. When you come and visit the brewery, please, I hope you will come and visit. You can try some of the water. It's a 30,000-year-old water. It has been carbon dated, so it's a fact. We're not making this up. It's not so much marketing, and it has a lot of success. All our brewing is done in slow brewing process. That means we don't add anything to increase the fermentation process. It's a natural process, and we take about 6 weeks to do it, rather than some of our friends that do bigger beers that take about 90 hours. So we still want to stay in the traditional way of brewing beer. Go to the next slide. So the new invention that we made in 2020, it happened in March, just before lockdown for the whole world. we were prepared for this for over 2 years, and we didn't want to miss this opportunity to launch it. We didn't want to stop everything because so much money and so much investment and so much marketing has gone into it that we wanted to launch this product. It's a very successful product at the moment. We are happy with the results. We are more than happy with our results, and I think it can only go up. And this is the water from our well. It's again 30,000 years old, and it's a brand new product which has a lot of success in Luxembourg. Go to next slide, please. Next slide. So just to give you some numbers, just to give you just have an idea. So how big we are not that big. We have 30 employees in the brewery. That's only production. We're 27 in 2019. In 2020, we will be at 30 again because we have a couple of interns, and because of the water, we need more production. It just gives you an idea of what we produce. We're at 150,000 hectoliters, which you have to translate to barrels in America, which I'm going to let you do before I do something stupid. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of our markets. So these are our markets. So when I say that I am in charge of global exports, excluding Belgium and France, is for the very simple reason that we do 77% of our volume is done in Luxembourg with 2,500 customers, 13% in Belgium, and 9% in France. France and Belgium are very interesting markets because they grow a lot. We have increases between 8 and 12% every year. So it's a very interesting markets to go into. Luxembourg, we're at 57% market share. After 57%, it gets difficult to compete with other ones. We can't really grow that much bigger when it comes to producing more beer. So that's why we have to expand. Everything that's a global export is 1% of our whole production. So you can see the whole difference of what we do in the region and what we do in the global export. And if we go to the next slide again. So the global export, just to give you an idea of what we're doing, we're a bit everywhere in the world. We call them opportunity markets for the very simple reason that we have met people that are interested in us rather than we go and find them. Cameroon being today one of our biggest markets for export. Believe it or not, we have not been there yet, but they are very happy with our beer, very happy with our products. So we keep trying to push that product. Maybe later on, that is something to look at, to go into global export and then try and sell more around the world. If we go to the next slide, that's it. That was the quick introduction of basically of what we do, of our company and where we represent ourselves. So next, I want to introduce Rocky Newman. He's been a professor of change supply and operations management in Miami University since 1987. He is a good friend of my father. He teaches now in areas in operations management, supply chain management, manufacturing strategy. And his research interests include manufacturing strategy, organizational issue in supply chain management, as well as supply chain management strategy. And let's not forget, he is a big beer fan, and he definitely understands the world of beer.
Yeah, beer is the big one. As Mathias said, I've been at Miami since 1987, and for the last 6 years, I organized and piloted, and then have taught successfully a course that uses our J-term, our January term, where we'll take 25 kids on an odyssey across the country. No, we'll use the brewing industry to study supply chain management. We'll spend a week in the Denver area, a week in Portland, and then come back to Asheville, North Carolina. And you say, well, why Asheville? Well, Asheville is kind of the East Coast mecca of the beer industry now. But we'll look at upwards of 35 different brewing related businesses, from hop farms to malt houses to bottle factories to can factories, as well as breweries from very small to very large. But again, why is beer? Beer is a great industry to study, especially from a business standpoint and a supply chain standpoint. It's very visible. It's the issues are very obvious. They're very out in front. They're not hidden in a computer chip. Students tend to love the idea of something that's that tangible and that's that visible. And yet there's some history to it. I mean, beer is sort of the working person's beverage, versus wine. And when you start to go back and look at some of these things, it just opens up all kinds of doors from a teaching perspective. Wine, for example, is fermented fruit juice. Well, you grow the fruit, you grow mostly grapes. You grow the grapes, you harvest the grapes. You really can't store, especially go back 1,000 years, go back 200 years. You really couldn't store the grape juice well enough to spread the production out over the year. So basically you produced all of the wine for a given harvest or a given vintage at one time, which meant you had to have a very large winery. And you did everything you were going to do in the first couple months after the harvest. Then it sits around doing nothing or giving tours, for the rest of the year. So wine was what we call a weight reduced industry. It's located where you have to locate where the grapes are grown. In France, in San Francisco, in South Africa, there are bands, latitudinal bands that tell you where you can make the grapes, and that's where you make the wine, and you have to transport it. Whereas beer, 5,000 years ago, we've been making beer since the Egyptians got some of their grain wet and it got left in a pot over the winter or the summer or whatever, and it fermented. Anywhere you can take a cereal grain with starch in it and convert it into sugar, you can ferment the sugar in that mix, that mash, and you're going to have something very, very close to beer. Beer has been made out of whatever ingredients are available, whether it's barley, wheat, oats, corn, rice. You can grow the grain, you can roast the grain to stop the germination, like you roast a coffee bean, and then you can throw that roasted grain in a bag, put it on the back of a donkey and haul it over the mountain. You can put a brewery wherever you want a brewery, wherever people are, because brewing involves a lot of water, and it's nice to be brewing where the people who are going to drink the beer are. And that's really been the history. Here in the U.S., prior to Prohibition, brewing was much like it is in Europe today. Every town had their brewery, their small brewery. You had, I think, 2,000 breweries in 1919. Prohibition hit 13, 14 years where they couldn't do their production. The only ones that survived in the 1930s were the very largest ones that found other things to do, making ice cream, making cheese, making candy. Well, at the end of Prohibition, there were only about 35, 45 viable breweries left, and yet there was a very thirsty public. You take that smaller number and divide up the marketplace. They had to be able to produce something that everybody could drink. We didn't have the capability back then of being as varied in our production as we do now and still being efficient. So what they did was they found sort of the broadest, most least common denominator versions of what was then called beer that we could come up with. And that's what you had until the 1970s or 80s. In 1978, Jimmy Carter said, you can make beer at home. All these guys started making beer at home. They found out they could make really good beer in the European historical styles that we had pre-Prohibition. And you could do it really easily. And everybody said, well, why don't you sell your beer? And you weren't allowed to until in the 1980s, the laws changed, and all of a sudden the craft industry has started. And since the 1980s, we've gone from about a few hundred breweries. When I started my class in 2015, there were 5,000 breweries in the U.S. This last January, I did it for the 6th time. There were over 8,000 breweries in the U.S. Most of them small, most of them in local towns, most of them doing what had been done pre-Prohibition, making the things that people liked and making the variety of different styles of beer. And to kind of segue into Mathias's talk, you can look at a beer, and this just happens to be a really great one that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to jump the gun with my official Bofferding opener, and I'm going to pour it into the right glass. Oops, there we go. And I'll tell you, you can make a beer out of either lager or ale type yeast that will affect the flavor and the style. You can roast the grain either dark to get a dunkel or a dark beer, or a pale roasted grain to get a pale beer. You can put more sugar into the original batch to start with, to a standard amount, and then what we call a double or an imperial, or in this case, a lot more, gives you a triple, which is 8% alcohol. You can add all kinds of things ranging from nutmeg and other spices to make a Christmas ale, which I think Mathias will talk about, fruit juices and other spices. Any of those things can be done to make a beer now that fits the best denominator, the best taste, as opposed to the lowest common denominator. With that, Mathias?
Thank you very much, Mr. Newman. That was absolutely very nice. That's exactly the interesting part about the American beer craft trend, because it's come into Europe a little later, but now that it's here, we see it more and more. I mean, we have in Luxembourg, a small country of 600,000 people, we have 21 different breweries, as you mentioned, all very local, very small, but all different flavors and different beer. Drinking beer has become much more popular, and I think sooner or later it will be a very nice drink to have, and it'll be even better than wine. Anyways, we're going to start with our presentation. So what we're going to do, as this is Miami University and we all have to do some work, we're going to go to some practical and then to actually learning some theories. That means after that, when you come to Luxembourg, you will have to pass a test. Otherwise, you will not be able to enter the brewery. So when we start off, the first test, the first slide, sorry, is how to taste a beer. I think a lot of people think that they know exactly what happens with beer, but a beer is a very romantic product. I think it's something very beautiful, something that people have been speaking about for over 1,000 years, and it's something that's important and it brings joy to life. I think you can also have a beer that you just chug in one go and you throw it away out the bottle. Those are beers for that type too, but overall, a beer is a very romantic product. It just shows that also by looking at the beer. In the Beer World Cup, 10% of the marks go into the look of the beer, what it looks like. So I think that's quite important. It's quite important to see. But the only problem is you can't be fooled by the way the beer looks, because sometimes a beer looks dark and looks heavy and looks like it's very hoppy when it's actually very easy to drink, and vice versa. So don't get too fooled by the sight, but I think looking at a beer is very important. Then the next step is the smell. I think the smell is the first taste of the beer you should have without actually drinking it. It's basically the door of the taste buds. By smelling it, you can also have a psychological effect, meaning that when you drink it and you have, for example, a Christmas beer that has a lot of ginger in it, and it reminds me of your grandmother that used to cook ginger at home, it brings you back and you automatically start to like the beer. It has so many aromas in a beer. It's very important to smell a beer before you drink it. Then the next thing is actually drinking it. So there's different ways of drinking it. The first thing, the basic biology of the tongue, is that you have sweet at the front, bitter at the back, and a sour on the sides of the beer. So when you drink a beer, you have to take a big gulp, not like you're drinking a wine with your lips shut and you kind of sip it. Don't be shy. Down the thing, take it to the back of the throat and really get that bitterness out of it. Then the other thing that you need in your mouth is called a mouthfulness. So basically, when you do have it in your mouth, you swallow it, then you have this, you kind of chew and open your mouth, you put oxygen in your mouth. And when you do that, the taste buds will kind of react to it. And this is when you really start to get all the different kinds of feeling. Is it burning? Is it cold? Is there carbon dioxide in? All these different things make a whole different type of beer. And I think that's what's important about beer. It's not just a thing that people drink in a bar quickly. You need to enjoy it. It's a very romantic kind of drink. So when we move to the next slide, now that you've all seen what to do, we're going to start. So we're going to take our beer, if most of you probably have already opened it. And we're going to drink it out of the classic Bofferding glass. So this is a flute. It's a very classic glass. The reason it's narrow, it's because it's a lager beer. And lager beer is a fragile beer. It's the hardest beer to make. Münchner Helles is the pinnacle of beers to brew. If you can make that kind of beer without any mistakes, it's great. The reason why it's so complicated, it's because you can't hide the aromas. You can't hide the mistakes. So for example, if you overcook it, or if you do any kind of mistakes, if you have a lager, you will notice these mistakes. So if you go on the IPA version, you can put a lot of hops in it, you can put a lot of aromas in it, and that's what you're going for. So if you do have a little cooking mistakes, it's not a problem, people won't notice it. But this is a very fragile product, and it's the world's most drank product that there is. It's the classic beer, it's the most sold. When you look at Budweiser or Heineken, these are the biggest brands in the world. So, as we learned, we look at the beer, we see the golden color. The reason why the glass is so long is because of the golden color, so you can really see it through the light. Then you have the foam, that you cannot miss the foam. I think the foam is a very important part of it. When you smell it, you can already smell some of the hop part of it. You can already smell some of the bitterness. And when you drink it, don't forget, open up the throat and down. As every time we drink it, it's a great beer. So when you drink it, the bitterness, it's not too much. So we are at 21 IBU. IBU is International Bitterness Unit. So for the people that don't really know what that is, I'll give you a little idea. So an American lager, a classic American lager, I'm talking about Budweiser, Bud Light, for example, they're at 10 IBUs. Then you have the Czech beers, Budweiser, not the original Czech Budweiser. It's got much more bitterness in it, and that goes up to 30 IBU. Then you have the IPAs, the European IPAs, that go to 40 to 70, and then you can have the American IPAs that can go up to 60 to 80. That means there's a lot of hop to it. It's a very bitter beer, and it's just a question, again, the taste is something, if you like it or not, no one's going to judge you. And I think that's what you need to know. There's no right or wrong answer. It's how you feel about the beer. And I think for me, this is ideal. It's a very good and drinkable beer. I hope you all enjoyed. So when we move into the next slide, we can keep drinking while we go down to the next slide. If Emily is there, yeah. So the importance of foam. Foam is always something that is a big debate in many countries. I think the US also has a debate, but if you go, for us, it's a bit closer to go to the UK. If you go to England and you order a pint and you have a little bit of foam, they will ask for their money back, because less foam means more beer. But the thing is, there is a lot of things about foam that are important. So for example, the basic thing is that foam is basically produced from bubbles. It's very simple. There is a protein in the water that doesn't like beer. It attaches to the CO2 and it just goes up. It's that simple. That's basically what foam is. But foam also has different other reasons. One of it opens up the aroma. So when you have a bottle and you just open it up and you put the foam in, you can smell it. You can smell what's in the beer. It gives you an avant-goût, as they say, like a pre-taste of the beer, what's coming. So imagine you go home for Thanksgiving and your mom's cooking a turkey. You can smell it in the oven. As soon as you get into the house, you start getting hungry. That's exactly what the foam does. It gives you that pre-smell of it. It opens up the odors and it opens up the taste buds or thirst buds where you want to drink more beer. And I think another important part of the foam is, this also depends on how the production is. Foam is important because it's an isolation of the beer. So when you drink a beer, from the top, it has a foam on it. You keep drinking it, and as you can see, it's stuck at the bottom. It keeps sticking to the beer. So the lower I go, it'll always be there. meaning that the carbon dioxide will stay in my beer and the beer will taste the same at my bottom of my glass than at the top of my glass. So when you have a beer that has no foam, or the foam goes away very easily, the flavor of the beer will also change. There's different reasons why the foam goes away. So one of them is just production. That's just a brewery problem, but that's rare. A lot of the things are because the glass is not clean. I think that's the key thing. Then lipsticks. So for example, if women have lipstick or you have chapstick, now it gets cold, so you put some grease on your lips, you start drinking it, it gets in the beer, the foam will die. Same as when you eat greasy food, when you eat a burger or fries or whatever, and you drink beer, the foam will go away as very quickly. And the other thing, the last thing, I think is temperature. Temperature will also affect how the foam will react to you. So it's important to have foam. So I'm an ambassador for foam. I'm not sure in the US, it's mixed feelings about it. I know in the UK, it's absolutely not allowed. Foam is part of beer. I think you should have it. And if you're worried about you're not getting enough beer, I'm sure if you can buy a second beer, you'll be happy. You'll be happier for the taste all the way to the end. So when we move on to the next beer, it will be the Batin Brun. So now we're going into, the Bofferding Brun. So it's Batin again, just to remind you, it's Batin for us in Luxembourg, Belgium, and France, for the simple reason that we didn't want to have two brands to go global, to start selling 2 or 3 brands. So it's much easier to put everything under one name. It's exactly the same beer. The only thing that changes is the name. So here you have a different type of glass. So this is the glass that you have. It's called a chalice or a goblet. It's a kind of a Belgian style, religious kind of style. I think the people that go to church have probably seen this type of glass before. This is also a low fermented beer, but it has a very strong alcohol percentage. So when you drink it, you will taste the beer. So when we go back into the first slide of the mouthful, when you have to taste it and you kind of chew on it with the oxygen, you can taste the alcohol on it. It kind of burns just a slightly bit. And the higher the alcohol, the more it burns. I think when you drink a bit of tequila or something like that, you can taste the alcohol. And it's definitely not that bad, but you can taste that there is a bit of a burning. And that's what you have is from the alcohol. So we're going to open the beer. So when you pour it, please don't forget the foam. I'm hoping that some people are going to change their habits. So you can see from the color, it's definitely much darker than the first one that we had. This is, as Dr. Newman said at the beginning, it's the roasted malt that we made. That's pretty much what it is. It's a base on a pils, so it's a low fermented beer, but the malts are roasted. So when you smell it, you have a bit of a caramel taste to it, and you have a bit of that caramel taste to it, which will make it feels like it makes it a bit sweeter. The danger with this beer is that it's very drinkable. You drink it easily at 7.2%, and you somehow forget that it's 7.2%. You think it's a lighter beer, and you keep drinking it. The bitterness is quite low at 29 IBU. So when you drink it, yeah, you can definitely taste the alcohol to it. If this was live, we could definitely get more of a reaction to it. But you can taste the alcohol. The aftertaste of it stays in your mouth of the alcohol. And I think, again, it's a dangerous beer because it's very easy to drink and you don't actually know how much you drink until it's too late. So when we move on to the next slide, we are going to look at the importance of a clean glass. I wanted to add this slide into it because It's a battle that brewers have been fighting for thousands of years. Every time there's a problem with a glass, it's always the beer's fault and the brewery doesn't do a good job, etc., etc. But that is not the case. So the first thing is, when you pour a beer, you want to have that foam on it. You have the first picture with the greasy glass versus the clean glass. These are the glasses that have been poured at the exact same time and been left there for about 10 to 20 seconds. You can see that the picture, that the glass in front of you, the foam is already deteriorating. It's already disappearing. 10 seconds later, it's gone. The very simple reason is because the glass is greasy. It hasn't been cleaned properly. This can be because the bartender holds the glass from the top, which is not allowed, which shouldn't be allowed, let's put it that way. The other reason is when you wash it, if you put it in the dishwasher with coffee mugs, big mistake, because coffee is a very greasy product. So that will mix in the water, which will mix in the beer glass, which will affect the beer. So ideally, what you want to do is to have, you can see it in the back of the pictures, there's two sinks. You want to have two sinks that only have beer glasses. There's no coffee in it or anything like that. You wash it in one, then you rinse it in the other, and then you have a little sprinkler on your bar where you sprinkle it for the simple reason that it will also cool the glass, because you want to have a normal room temperature / a bit colder kind of glass. On the continent, we don't like frozen glasses. I know in America that is a big thing. The argument in America is that it keeps the beer colder, but is that true? It's debatable, because once the beer is in it and you hold it in your hand, you're warming it up, and let's be honest, 2 minutes later, the glass is warm temperature. What it also does, it gives a shock to the beer and it will lose some flavor for it. So a chilled glass is not ideal to have. Again, it depends on what beer you have and it depends on what you like. Everything that's taste changes with every person, so I'm not trying to insult anyone. So the next picture that we see is the dust particles. So this is a bit extreme. The picture that I have, this was at a bar. They had glasses for about 2 years under the counter. It collected dust and it hasn't been rinsed, and we did it just for an experiment. It's very extreme. But when you have bubbles in your beer, it's not a good thing. It just means that the glass is dirty. It's dust particles. I think when you pour the beer, you will have bubbles in it at the beginning. That's normal. There's carbon dioxide in it. That's normal. But ideally, there should be absolutely no bubbles in your glass when you have a clean glass. I think that's a very important part of it. Then the next one is, the last picture is the actual perfect glass, how you should be. So first of all, you can see the lacing effect, which is the foam that's stuck on the glass. Those are different reasons for it. Obviously, the brewing process, because if you do a beer with a lot of pasteurization, with a lot of additives, it might not stick as well. If you have a 100% natural beer, you will see that it will stick to the glass. And every time you have a drink, if you drink from the same side of the glass, you will see exactly how many sips you've had until the end of it. The last thing, if you see the picture, there is not a single bubble in it. You can even see through the glass and see the cachet on the other side of it. That's the way a beer should be. It doesn't mean it's flat. It means it has a clean glass. And I think this is something that people don't know, don't want to know. I understand as a barkeeper, it's a lot of work. When you have 50 clients, it's very hard to clean all the glasses perfectly. But it's something to be careful of, or to be interested in. It's not a problem when you drink it. There's no effects to it. It's absolutely natural. It's not a problem. But it's interesting to see. Next time you go to a bar, you can see how many bubbles are there. And if you drink from the same glass, that's one of the things. I keep drinking from the same glass, because after the third beer, you know your glass is clean because you've drank all the dirt in it. And if you keep drinking from it, you'll see the glass will get clearer and clearer and there will be less and less bubbles. And it just means that the glass gets cleaner. And I want to talk about this for the simple reason that the only people that get the blame is the brewery. When there's no foam, the bartender will tell you, yeah, well, it's a beer from that brewery. It's not good. It's the beer brewery's fault. It's flat. So they didn't deliver it right. All these little details. When it literally a lot of the time comes down to how the beer is poured. Nowadays, you can control the beer from the very beginning until your glass. So the mistake usually happens, not always, but usually happens when you actually serve the beer. So when we move on to the next beer, we will go to Dr. Newman's favorite beer. This is the Batin Triple. So this is the first and only high fermented beer that we will drink tonight. High fermentation means it will be at a higher, it will be brewed at a higher temperature. The fermentation will be at a higher temperature, and it usually means different things. All the IPAs, on average, means that it's got more alcohol in it. It's got a high brew because you can brew it at a room temperature. So most microbreweries, when they start off, they brew at home and they can't ferment the beer at 4%, at 5 degrees, at 6 degrees. This is Celsius. I don't know what the Fahrenheit is, but a high fermented beer goes up to 12 to 14 degrees when it ferments. So it's a different type of beer. It usually means it has more foam. It usually means it has more alcohol, and it usually means it has more flavor. So high fermented beer is definitely very recognizable. So the glass we drink, this is a classic triple glass. It's a large at the bottom for the very simple reason when the beer comes in, it needs to oxidize. It needs to have oxygen to react, to get the foam and to get all the flavors out. That's what makes this beer much better. And then it also makes it a bit bendy at the top for different reasons. One of them is that you can drink it easier than rather a big one. Second of all, you can smell it better. And third of all, importantly, unless you want to hold your beer glass like this, you can hold it from here, meaning that the temperature from your hand is not going to heat up the beer so much rather than holding it like this. So if you hold it from this, that's why a lot of the glasses are a bit bendy, so you can hold it better and the temperature from your hand doesn't heat up the beer. So if we're all at the same pace and we're opening a triple, it should definitely start getting foamier. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was doing two things at the same time, camera and this doesn't work. But it's definitely much foamier. The foam reacts much more to the oxygen due to the high fermented beer. What's interesting about this beer is only available in bottles for the very simple reason because there's 2 fermentations done in the brewery and the 3rd fermentation is done in your bottle. So when you look at the bottle at the end, you will still have some yeast extract. So ideally, you want to pour everything into the glass at the same time so you can have that little cloudy look. That cloudy look means there's yeast in it, which also has that little sweet flavor to it, a bit fruity flavor to it. When you, depending on whose nose it is, it could be a bit banana, a bit peary, and that's what the taste is. And that's the yeast. The yeast is a very sweet tasting. The yeast that we use is a very sweet tasting kind of taste. Bitterness, we're at 22 IBUs, so again, we are not very bitter for it. For the simple reason that we want to do a drinkable beer. We want people to drink not only 1, but 5 or 6, or if they can, 10. That's really the point of what we try and do. We're trying to make a drinkable beer. That doesn't mean we encourage people to drink, but we don't want to have a beer that they have one and then they don't even think about having another one, or even think about next week, I will never have that beer again. Drinkability is a very important key of it. So when we poured it, as you can see, I have definitely a lot of foam to it. It's a foam that sticks. The foam doesn't get a different color. So if you have a lot of preservatives or additives to your beer, sometimes it can have a different, like a gray color on your foam. That happens too. That just again, it's not dangerous. It's just a type of beer. It's if you compare, if you go to a local farmer's market and you buy fresh beans, or you buy beans in a tin can, or frozen beans, it's the difference. They're both good, but they both have different people that are interested in it. So when we drink it, can definitely taste the alcohol. We can taste it a bit less than the Brune because of the high fermented beer and the hops that are in it, which disguise the alcohol a little bit. But you definitely know what you're drinking, and you definitely know that you're drinking a bit of a stronger type of beer. We call it a bière de dégustation, so it's a beer that you don't drink, but you enjoy. You'll drink one rather than a lager beer, which you can drink a couple in a night. So when we go on to the next slide, it will be just a little basic education for everyone, which you probably all know, is about how to choose your beer. I mean, obviously, the obvious choice is to choose a Bofferding. I think we've covered that. But in case you do go somewhere, the unlikely chance that they don't have a Bofferding, there's different things that you should look for. So the first thing you should look for is the bottles. So I'm sure you've noticed there's different types of bottles, and all these bottles have different effects. Enemy number one of beer is something called a blue light. Blue light is something that you have every day, everywhere, and most of it comes from the sun. It's a problem that reacts with the hop, and it will give a little skunky aroma to it, skunky aroma to the beer. So there's different types of beers, but the brown beer is the number one protector of it. There's no blue light that will go through a brown bottle. Sorry, not brown beer, brown bottle. This is one of the reasons why, I'm randomly guessing, but 85% of all the beers are in brown bottles. It's because they don't like sunlight. The clear and the green one have no protection of this at all. So you have already a challenge. If you have a clear bottle and if you're in the sun, it will already react with the hops, so the taste will be different. Now, there are some beers that only do clear bottles, for example, a Corona. But a Corona it's not a bière de dégustation. It's a drinking beer. So you put a lime in it, and it hides the flavor, and it's like a water. It's easy to drink, doesn't have that much flavor to it. The lime brings the flavor in, so it doesn't matter too much. But if you have a nice German Pilsner and you put it in a clear bottle, you will already have an effect to it, and you will already taste it. So that's a big challenge to it. The next part is the storage. So once you found your beers at jungle gyms, you found your beer and you want to store it. The number one thing is to store them right up. Ideally, you store them in the fridge. If you don't have room in it, or you bought too much of it, you want to put them the right way up. The simple reason of this is that when you look at a beer bottle, there's still always a little bit of oxygen left, a little bit of air left. When you put it the long way down, that means the surface area will touch more, surface area of the beer will touch more of the oxygen, which means it will oxidize, which means it will change faster in the taste. So if you want to keep your beer for a bit longer, no matter what beer you have, if it's a lager that you can last for a short time, or if you have a beer at 15% that you can keep for 10 years, ideally you have it the right way up, because it will keep better from the oxidation, will change the flavor. Of course, if you buy your beer today and you drink it in 2 days, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't make an effect at all like that. The next thing is the shelf life. The shelf life is an important part of the beer process. First of all, because I think we have to do it. Everyone is interested in it. So for us, for our beers, most of our beers, low fermented beers, we have about 6 months to a year of shelf life, depending on the beer. The very simple reason is that it's a 100% natural product. That means you can pasteurize it. You can flash pasteurize it. That means you go through a machine that will put I don't know, 80 degrees on the beer for a couple of seconds, just to kill all the bacteria, so it doesn't ferment more in the bottle and the flavor doesn't change. So if you do that, that means the shelf life will be longer. Depending on what beer you have, even lagers, they can last longer, so you know it's pasteurized or they have additives to it. The other thing is that for the Christmas beer on the shelf life, for any kind of shelf life, especially for our product, because I know our product, I don't know about the other product, but for our product, even if the shelf life is off by 3 years, you can drink the beer, you're not going to get sick, you're not going to fall over. The only thing is the taste is not going to be the same. We have 4 ingredients, it's 100% natural product, so even if it's off, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not like a milk that you have to drink because it will get off and you'll have a problem with it. So don't worry about it if it's off by a month or 2, even 6. I'm hoping by 6 you would have drank yours and gotten more, but I hope you would have had that. And so it's the shelf life is important, but you're okay to drink over. It's just a best before date. Then the last thing that we do for us is, I've spoken about it before, is the drinkability. I think the drinkability is a very important part of our business for the simple reason that we are not in the craft beer business. That means we are not niche. We don't want to produce a beer that people drink once and enjoy it and think it was special and I'll never drink it again because it has coconut and cherry in it with cinnamon in it. We want to be classic beer drinkers and we want to keep every beer that we make a long time. And I think August Busch said it the best. Drinkability really means to stop drinking because you know it's time to stop. I think we've all been there when you know I shouldn't have a last one, but you don't really want to. Then we've all been there, and that's what drinkability is, and that's literally what we're trying to do with all the beers that we do. So on that note, we will finish our last beer, which is our Christmas beer. This is a seasonal beer. It comes out every Christmas. It has been since the beginning. Very popular, and it's an interesting beer for the simple reason that people are used to a Christmas beer being very strong, a lot of flavors, a lot of cinnamon or just Christmassy. But for us, again, we go back to drinkability, which is a very important part of it. So what we have for a glass, as it's a lager, it's this. This is a tulip, as they say in French, because it reminds them of tulip, the flower. This is the go-to glass. So there's a lot of glasses, and I think that if you're in doubt and you don't know what glass to get, this is the all-around glass. You can drink an IPA in it because it's open. You can drink a lager in it. You can drink any kind of beer. This is, so if in doubt and your wife or your husband doesn't want you to bring a whole collection of 35 glasses, one glass will do and you can drink all of them. So this is the simple reason why it's such an elegant glass is because you can hold it from the bottom, so you don't heat up the beer, and it's a glass that has been known around the world everywhere. So when we pour the beer, it's a very dark color, and I think that already makes people a bit worried about it or think about the taste of what you have. When you smell it, it smells already much sweeter. It's got a 20 IBU, meaning that it's not very bitter. Again, going back to the drinkability, which is an important part of it. And it's got those caramelized note to it. So when we go to the brune, it's got the malt that is caramelized. Here we do the same thing. We have 3 different types of malts in here, and you can definitely see a difference of it. And when you drink it, it tastes like Christmas, as they say. But I think it's an easy drinkable beer because the taste doesn't linger in your mouth for too long. Once you finished it, you're ready for the next one. You have some beers that some people like it, but you have some beers that you drink and 20 minutes later you still have that taste in the mouth, and it's less drinkable than a good Christmas beer. And for the tasting, that was it. If there's any questions or anything. Emily, Eric? No, you're on mute. Eric, you're on mute.
There we go. Didn't want to. My wife was giving violin lessons, so I didn't want to have that being broadcast over the internet or the wine tasting. Although it might have been made from some nice relaxing music. But so we do have a couple questions that have come in. Does the quality or taste of the beer differ depending on the years the grain was harvested, like wine?
No, absolutely not, because most breweries will use different types of grains anyways from different buyers, so there's no change of it. The thing that changes is how you roast it, how you cook it, what you do with it afterwards. The grain itself doesn't have an influence on the beer.
All right. Thanks for that question or answer. Another question. How is the emergence of the American craft brew scene viewed by longtime brewers in Europe?
It's a very positive thing. I think we are definitely 10, 15 years behind you guys, but it's a very positive thing. As I mentioned before, we have now, so we're a very small country. There used to be, in the 80s, 90s, there used to be 3 different breweries. Now there's 21. Most of them are very, very small, but they're craft. The good thing about having craft brewers is that people are interested in beer. Beer used to have this image of it's a drink that it's not as sophisticated as wine, let's put it that way. And it used to have that image, but now more and more in Europe, we get people interested in beer. There's so many varieties of beer. A person that says, I don't like beer, for me doesn't exist. If that person doesn't drink alcohol, fair enough. But if you don't like beer, that doesn't exist. There are so many flavors. Every year, there are so many flavors in the Beer World Cup that come in, that drop out. There is much bigger variety of flavors in beer than there are in wine. So it doesn't exist a non-beer drinker. It's because they don't like the image or they don't like one type of beer. Understandable. But everything else, it doesn't exist. So the craft movement that came to Europe was a very positive thing, and we are very happy with it, and we can only encourage it. People are interested in beer.
All right. So another question for beer glass. What's the best shape or best glass for tasting lager versus Bock versus the Pils? I know you kind of covered some of that in earlier on.
All the same type of glass. I think it's the lager, the Pils, and well, my glass is still full. That means I haven't been drinking enough. Ideally this, for the simple reason is it's long. You get to see the color. It's a delicate beer. The lager, the Pils, the Bock. The Bock is usually a bit darker, so it has a bit more flavor. But ideally this. Also, it keeps the foam going. So this is from the beginning of it. It still has my foam. If I had this beer glass in a big glass, like my triple glass, the foam would be gone. So ideally, you take a long tube or what we call a flute.
So for like the darker beers, like a Bock or a heavier beer, I know you were showing us like for the Christmas beer or the triple.
Yeah. But different. Bock. So a German Bock beer is not too far away from a lager. It's the rule of thumb is very simple. It's the more alcohol, the bigger the glass. It's that simple. Because the reason of this is because when there's a lot of alcohol, it needs oxygen to breathe. So when you have a small glass, you need to let all the aromas out. So you need a big glass to put it in, let the alcohol breathe, let the flavors breathe, and that means, because more alcohol usually means more flavors. So I think if you base yourself by a rule of thumb, the more alcohol, the bigger the glass, the better. And I don't mean by liter and
The volume, just, yeah, more the kind of the throat of the glass. Okay. All right. Another question came in. What are the differences between a pilsner, an ale, and a lager, and how would you suggest to remember those differences?
Okay. Oh my God, complicated.
Putting you on the spot here.
Pilsen lager is one thing. Ale is easy. Ale is usually high fermentated beer. It usually doesn't have a lot of carbon dioxide, heavier in alcohol, more flavor to it. The IPA actually comes from the ales. It's when the British colonized India, and they actually added just hops to the beer so the beer could keep all the way to India. And basically, when they came to India, the hop fermented into the beer, and they got the IPA, which is an Indian pale ale, and that's where it comes from. So the pale ale is a classic British lager. It's when you watch a British movie, it's a glass that has no foam, that has no bubbles, that's just all the way up to the top with some black color in it. That's an ale. Easy. The lager and the pils is complicated. First of all, because of vocabulary. So in different places, a lager is a pils is a lager. So that's already the first problem. The second of it, it also changes on the malt. So depending on what malt you use, that's it. Overall, it pretty much is the same type of beer. And that's really, it's a question of fermentation and raw materials. But overall, it's the same idea of a lager. That's as close as I can get.
All right.
Technically, you can email me and then...
Yeah, we'll go into more detail on that. Yeah. Okay. So one more question came in. Is there a difference between the Brune and the triple under the Bofferding label versus the Baton label, or are they the same beer, just a different label?
So the Brune and the Christmas, these are two very different beers. Very different beers. One is a Christmas beer, which is a lager, which is much easier to drink. It has 5% alcohol, and the Brune is at 7 point. Before I say something, it's at 7.2. So it's very different types of beers. The difference between a Batin Brune and a Bofferding Brune and a Batin Christmas and a Bofferding Christmas, there's no difference. It's exactly the same beer. The only reason why we did that is because when we sell to a new market, which is far away, like America, China, Colombia, we don't want to start importing 3 different brands because it gets too complicated. It's complicated with one already, especially in America with all these craft breweries. I mean, what did Dr. Newman say? He said, 80,000 breweries and we are there to compete with 2 different brands, and that's too complicated. So we put, the only thing we did is we changed the label. That's the only thing.
All right. Let's see. I'm expecting the next question came possibly from Andy Adams, who lives in Luxembourg, or there might be another person or a couple other alumni that live in Luxembourg. But what is your favorite bar in Benoîtville that serves Bofferding and is on a red corner? So I'm not quite sure. I guess that might be an inside little joke there, but
yes. I'm not doing any advertising because they're all closed at the moment. We're on lockdown. Yeah.
Things are closed here, and I got a lot of family in Ohio, and they're a little more open than they are right now. So, all right. So another question. Okay, here's the last question. Which is your favorite beer, and how can we buy some of this delicious beer?
So personally, I am a classic lager drinker, Bofferding. It's a beer that I've started drinking young, and I always enjoyed it, and I like all the other beers, but I drink them rarely. For me, it's this because it's an all-arounder. That means I can drink it in the winter, I can drink it in the summer. It's not like a fruit beer that you only drink at certain times. This I could drink all day, all night, every time of the year. How you get the beer? Number one is whoever is listening, you're all welcome to join the brewery. You can, when you come to Luxembourg, email me. You will get a free tour. I will give you a tour and a tasting, and you'll get to see what we do. Also, we do sell in France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. So anywhere there, in any supermarket, any bars, not any, but a lot. And then in the US, we are slowly developing the US. So we've started coming into Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, it was last year. So we're still very new. We're very new at the US market. So give us a couple of years and then you'll have it everywhere. In the Super Bowl commercials, we'll be there.
It's available in Wisconsin in a lot of places, especially probably around Milwaukee, where Ansay, I think, is located just north of Milwaukee. So you can check out their website or just type in Bofferding Beer USA. I think it will give you directions. Yes, I know. And they deliver to Ohio exclusively. So you can order cases of your favorite Bofferding beer after this. So if you want more of one flavor, you can get online and you can get there. But hopefully in the near future, you can expand hopefully to Kentucky so I can enjoy it too. So right now, I had to have some substitute beer for me. I almost went to going with the bourbon here, since that's what's known here in Kentucky. So again, Mathias or George, I know you're on there. So if you ever get back here and get into Lexington, Kentucky, I'll take you to some of the distilleries here and experience some of the great bourbon that we have here. So here, let's see. I think one last question, or did I answer that? I think that we answered that. Yeah. Or wait, one more came in. Talk more about the expansion of Bofferding in other U.S. cities. I think we kind of covered that a little bit. Hopefully, I know here in Kentucky until last year or earlier this year that the liquor laws prohibited of the shipping of different beers from out of state. So again, I think a lot of it has to do with the individual state laws. So Mathias, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So for us, this was a challenge. I mean, it's always the United States, but it turns out that every state is very different, has different laws, and has different rules for everything. So we started in Wisconsin because that's where Ansay is based. But then going to a different, if it's, I don't know, Michigan or Ohio, if you go anywhere, or even if you go anywhere you go, you have to apply for different licenses. You have to do a lot of paperwork, things we were not aware of, but I guess that's how you learn. And but it's a challenge that we are happy with, and I think the result of the beer is positive. I think people are happy with it, so I think we're going to continue on that, and then again, Super Bowl, that's the goal.
Yeah, it'd be great someday to see it on the big screen. So yeah, okay. So not seeing anymore. Mathias, I want to thank you. I know it's late there for Luxembourg. I think you had a previous Bofferding tasting for all the alumni in Luxembourg. So I appreciate you doing a double on this one. So I think your dad's there. He's been warming up on the bench for quite a bit for most of the evening over there. So say hi to George. He's also a board member of the Alumni Advisory Committee. So look forward to seeing you here shortly in the near future, George. So thanks again, Mathias, and everyone for joining us tonight for this first Bofferding tasting. We hope to try and maybe do this again next year, and hopefully again expand the footprint. I know, especially with COVID coming around, we had to cap the distribution early, but there was an overwhelming support for this. I mean, we first announced it, and it really took fire. So again, it was almost like the 50th anniversary, where we were very surprised by the reaction that we had, and again, also the merchandise that we have out there. The reaction has been very great for all you MUDEC alumni that are out there supporting this. The more you support these kind of adventures, the more we show Miami the importance of the MUDECers and what it means to all of us. So again, this has been a great experience. I look forward to doing this again, hopefully either in the spring or next fall with everyone else. So again, I believe this has been recorded. So again, if you've missed this or you want to go back to certain points, you can go over that again. Or if you want to if you got more beer left over, you can have, again, friends over when COVID lifts. So again, you can see at the bottom of your screen, the Miami University Alumni website is there for great information to go back and see this video again. And then also be sure to, again, check out the alumni merchandise that we have put out there. There's T-shirts, sweatshirts. I think there's going to be labels and stickers. And what I was really surprised was cornhole sets. So again, cornhole and Bofferding beer, hey, this summer, that's a great combination right there. So get on that site, put it on your Christmas list. Tell your favorite person that this is what you want for Christmas. So again, we really appreciate everyone coming out tonight, spending an hour. Mathias, again, thank you very much. And I guess that everyone have a great weekend and love and honor Miami.